are going to turn our attention to the subject of music and gaming. So what is it they both have in common? Well, they both trigger emotion, they both tell a story, they build a narrative. So we're going to be exploring some aspects of what's happening now currently in music and gaming. Cool. So I am going to tell you a little bit about 𝗕𝗓𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀, who is going to be moderating this discussion for us. So one very interesting thing about 𝗕𝗓 is she's written a book, and she has written a book about the music in Zelda. So she's very well qualified to be leading this panel for us. 𝗕𝗓 is also a doctoral student currently at the University of Liège and Sorbonne University. She's funded by the FRESH grant, FNRS, and she's working at the Liège Game Lab, where her PhD work is about translating the language of video game fans to others in the ecosystem. So a very, very interesting background 𝗕𝗓 has. So I'll invite you, 𝗕𝗓, now to join the stage for us, and then your panel to come up.
Thank you. Yeah, sit around me. So it's a pleasure to be here today. And with me I have Julia Gaillardeau-Chaunoz, who is Senior Music Marketing Manager at Ubisoft. I also have Tarafa Salul, who is President and co-founder at Kid Katana Records, and Matt Ombre, who came from the UK and is currently the head of music and gaming partnerships at 𝗧𝘂𝘂𝘀. So today, it's not just about talking about music in video games, because certainly music is helping building narratives in the game, but today it's a very big marketing topic, and it's also about building narratives around the games and around music in general. So we are going to break down a few preconceived ideas that people often have about video game music, which is so much more than just pushing music in a game. But before we start, we're kind of curious, because we are all very big gamers here and we know our topic very, very much. But do we have some gamers in the audience? Who plays video games? Okay, that's a few people. And in these people, do we have some very kind souls who actually listen to video game music? Oh, we do have 2, 3, 4. That's amazing. Perfect. So before we dive into the questions, I think one thing I want all of you to tell us is introduce yourself. Who are you? What is your job? What you are doing here today? And what led you to gaming industry and gaming and music industry in particular? Julia, do you want to start and tell us about yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm a Senior Music Marketing Manager at Ubisoft, technically at Ubisoft Music. And my job is to handle everything music-wise, from distribution on platforms, amplification on social media and media, but also more and more looking into the marketability topic around music. So, you know, partnering with artists in-game, outside of game, music concerts, vinyls. So this, and the why I got into gaming is because I've grown up with gaming. I've grown up with Adibou, Mario 64, Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I know that puts me I'm younger than I sound like when talking about the games I played. And then I've always loved everything music-wise. I did 18 years of dance, 5 years of singing. I even tried piano and quickly gave up. So when I joined Ubisoft as a brand manager first, I was working on games, and I discovered while working on Just Dance that there was a music team within Ubisoft. And I figured, you know what, I really like what some others are doing in the industry, especially Riot Games. For those who know League of Legends, they're super strong when it comes to music. And knowing that there was a team like that in Ubisoft, I figured I wanted to do that as well. So I joined Ubisoft Music.
Thank you so much. So yeah, today in the gaming industry, we have studios who are interested into building things around music, and they have teams dedicated to that. But sometimes we need some dedicated music industry, particular to help the studio, and that's where I come to 𝘕𝘂𝘀.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm 𝘕𝘂𝘀. I co-founded and I run a record label called 𝘕𝘂𝘀𝘀 Records, specializing in video game soundtracks. Basically, we cover a lot of things related to music for game studios and publishers. So from music production, music supervision, the legal side of things, to the distribution of the soundtracks, digitally and physically, mostly vinyl, sometimes CDs. My background is music. I've started my career as an artist, as a rapper. And I've always been passionate about video games, so even in my early rap days, we were sampling, game soundtracks and stuff like that. So that, to me, the connection was already there. Then I entered the music industry later on, and I've been handling business development and A&R roles for a digital distribution company, a French company called Idol. I've been doing that for 13, 14 years maybe. But I really wanted to connect more with the video game music world, to be more involved in the creative side, to help optimize the distribution and the marketing of the soundtracks, because I felt that there was something happening, but not enough music professionals involved. So with my business partner, we started the company, and now I'm here, basically.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have a lot of relationship already to different culture, whatever it's rap culture, dance culture. But there is also video game music as a culture. And Matt, I think your story is also very interesting in that regard.
Yeah, so at the moment I work at a company called 𝘠𝘂𝘀. We're a video game record label, but also a full-service creative agency for basically getting real-life bands and artists into games. That's what I do in my partnerships role. Prior to joining 𝘠𝘂𝘀, I was actually a freelance journalist specializing in the intersection of video games and music. So I think I spent about 10 years, I think, researching kind of like video game music culture and how bands are getting into games and the impact that's had on their careers. Then after doing that for a while, I was like kind of bored of just interviewing people and learning about all of this cool stuff. I want to start doing some of this cool stuff and coming up with creative ideas. So that led to me joining 𝘠𝘂𝘀. But I think in terms of where my relationship with video game music started, I think like a lot of people in their mid-30s, I'm 33, I grew up on games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and like that series in particular just introduced me as like, I think I was probably like 7 years old or something at the time, to all of these hardcore and punk rock and alternative bands that I would have never listened to otherwise. That got me into metal music. I then started promoting gigs and putting on gigs at local clubs in my city, then joined a metal band. So for me, I think there's always been this synonymous relationship between music and wider aspects of music culture and then video game culture. So to bring those two sides together, I think all four of us here, that's what we all specialize in, right?
Yes.
Just one thing, I think there's really something for different generations. For us, like, of course we are passionate about music, but it seems that also our music culture comes from video games in part. That's what you're saying with I have the same thing with Streets of Rage, for example, like the first one. I was very young and I was listening to dance music, and somehow the Koshiro music, so the composer of Streets of Rage 4, of Streets of Rage 1 and 2 and 3, it really resonated to me, and I don't really know, it's the chicken and the egg. I don't really know if that's video game that led me to music, or if it's the other way around.
And just to finalize on that, I don't know if many people are aware, but a video game as a cultural market is now bigger than movies and I mean cinema and books and music. So right now, video games are a platform so big for up-and-coming artists, but as well for very big artists. And that's also why we do what we do.
Yes, exactly. Video game music as a culture is actually very difficult to define because video game music can mean either chiptune. Do you all know what chiptune is? Like the old sound for the very first console, what we call beep boop in a very specific language. Video game music can be all this very old sound that made video games what they are today, but it also can be any other kind of sound, and that's why video game music is now out of the game, and we have a lot of industries, like studios like Riot, who are actually investing into making some clips, some video clips with even in-game groups like KDA, to take the most successful example. So it's very difficult to define video game music culture. How does these two faces coexist in your work? Because you are speaking to multiple audience. Matt, you have been advocating for video game music as a journalist. So how did you play with these two faces?
I think, like you said, video game music is hard to define because there's no single genre of video game music. I think there's some people who try classing video game music as like a genre itself, but you can't do that because video game music is techno, it's contemporary classical, it's rap, it's hip-hop, it's jazz fusion, it's K-pop. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different genres that encompass that, it's really difficult to understand. But I think part of what we do at 𝗧𝘂 is we spend a lot of time talking to labels and because of the partnerships work and stuff like that. And one thing I would like to see more of, and I think this is really important, is the same way that video game studios are now hiring music experts because you need to, just because of all the complexities involved with licensing and just publishing and everything all around that. I'd love to see more labels hiring video game experts, because while there's definitely, I mean, we can all speak to this, there's a huge willingness from labels to not just put music into games, but also explore wider creative opportunities around games. That might be skins, which are like character costumes based on like an artist's IP. That might be music kits. It might be banners or backgrounds or frames or anything else. But in order to make the most of those opportunities, you need people within labels and within music companies who speak the language of gamers. Because if they don't speak the language of gamers, and video game terminology is like incredibly complicated, I'm not saying you need like 10 or 15 years of experience playing games, although it does definitely help, but people who are involved in video game partnerships roles within music companies definitely need to understand kind of like the basic terminologies, the different types of video game audiences, the importance of understanding that doing something in the biggest platforms, i.e. Fortnite and Roblox, like you get loads of cool music activations on there, but they're not always necessarily the best places for artists. Like, think outside the box, look to smaller games, look to indie games, look at what's possible there. You did a collaboration, for example, with Mike Patton for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and when I saw that, I was just like, what? Like, yeah. Ubisoft as well has done like loads of stuff as well in Watch Dogs and across Assassin's Creed. There's like all of these different games out there where there's potential to do stuff, and I think, yeah, I'd just love to see more games people within labels, I think, to help more really cool stuff happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think video game music cannot be defined as a genre per se, but there's a specific expertise needed to work with video game and music together.
Yes, and one thing that is very important when it comes to video game and music is the concept of interactivity, because we play with a game, so we're involved with the game. And maybe a question more for Julia, but how does the interactivity affect the relationship between music and players? Because you have been working also in interactivity on social network, etc. So is there a big difference from your perspective?
I think that, speaking about out-of-game music, one of the stereotypes that we have about video game music is that it's only made to be heard in a video game, but that's not true. Like, most of the time, we've released them on on digital streaming platforms and even social platforms. We want people to listen to them outside of their gaming moments. We want them to use our music in their content for social media. That's very new. That's a way that we connect players, and we keep them connected to the game that they love playing. because gaming and music, as we were saying, are connected by emotions. And I think it's even stronger when you play a game and you listen to the music, because then the music carries fond memories or challenging times or sad moments. You might even, I don't know, be very emotional while listening to some video games music, same as you would do with movies music, movie soundtracks. So, yeah.
Actually, I did receive a message after releasing my book on Zelda, someone who thanked me for writing it, because it led him to replay the game and re-listen to the soundtrack at a time where he was trying to have kids, and he finally managed to have it, and he decided to play the piano one more time. So we have a lot of nice story like that. And well, we have interaction which create meaning and narratives into the game, but interaction can also be with the game and between game and music, in the sense that it becomes a driving force for the developers. 𝘕𝘂𝘀, I think you have some very interesting insight on this.
Indeed. So as you said, Julia, the music is not just functional in a game. It's really an integral and instrumental part of the player's experience. And in that way, the challenge is for all of us, I think, and also for the creative persons, is to translate the studio's vision into music. So when we work with the studio and that we need to help them to produce the music, this is something that we need to understand. And something that it's a big challenge. So for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge project that you mentioned, we had to stick to the fun and the excitement and the epicness of the Ninja Turtles, while modernizing it a bit and try to find artists that fit the project. And actually, it was pretty easy because it's the Ninja Turtles, and so it's so obvious that. And so we reached out to Mike Patton from Face No More and Mr. Bungle and Thomas. And he was super excited and super happy to collaborate and say, oh, finally I can show some of my music to my nephews. It was really good. And same with the Wu-Tang guys, So we've brought Raekwon and Ghostface for an original track for the game. And they were super happy. And it's an indie game. We didn't have like a crazy budget, but they went for it. And they were like, hey, how come that no one called us before for a Ninja Turtles game? We are the Wu-Tang, we are in New York, it's the 90s. It's also obvious, so they were happy to do that. But then it's not easy also to create those collaborations with the artists when you are not, especially when you are not a big studio or a big company, it can be messy,
Yeah, and what's interesting is that you can bring some very well-known artists into a game, but game music actually have their own celebrities. Yeah. And I believe there is a game to be released this year that's called Absalom, where you are actually gathering some iconic figures of game music.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different approach because this time it's really a video game music celebration when we are bringing different great game music composers. So there's Gareth Coker, the main composer, but we also brought Yuka Kitamura from Elden Ring, Motoi Sakuraba from Golden Sun and the Soul series, and Mick Gordon, who does the Doom 2016. And you have to make it work together, and in that case, it was all the inspirations of the game. It's a medieval setting, beat 'em up, but with Japanese inspirations and some heavy metal in the background. So we had to put all the pieces together and to find the right roster. But really happy with the outcome.
Yes, metal as well as rap has a very strong connection to video games. Matt, I believe you released a Cult of the Lamb metal album, which is an arrangement of a pre-existing soundtrack, but in a very specific music style. How did this happen?
Yeah, so I think There's always been a long history between video game music and like remix and arranged albums. Even if you like go back to the 80s and 90s, you had like Ninja Tune as an example, who were like a British dance label in their very early days. They were doing loads of partnerships with like old PlayStation games. Then you've got the Wipeout games and stuff like that. You've got Rockstar, who made Grand Theft Auto back in the day. They were doing remix albums for Manhunt. So part of what we want to do at 𝗧𝘂, and like definitely me specifically, and again I think we all kind of speak to this, is remix albums or arranged albums and cover albums. They're a really good opportunity, not just for video game studios to like monetize their music more and just give something back to the fans, but they're also a really cool opportunity for wider bands and artists in the music industry to get their first foothold into games. So we had an indie client, we have an indie client called Massive Monster. They're a studio part of Devolver Publishing. They've got a game called 𝗏𝘓, which is like, if anyone's ever watched Happy Tree Friends, that like really horrific like animated TV show, imagine that, but like a video game. It's got these very cutesy characters, but it's like very, very graphic. So all of the satanic imagery in that game kind of lends itself really well to heavy metal and alternative music. So Massive Monster, they worked with a producer who was a friend of theirs to make basically a mini metal album, I think 6 tracks, which were just metal covers of songs in the game. Came to us and was like, can we get some metal vocalists on this? We came back and was like, we should get a guest guitarist on every single song as well. We should get another vocalist involved, because the more bands we get involved, the more reach we've got in terms of promoting the album afterwards. So I think in total, I think we had members from Trivium, Polyphia, 𝘂𝘂𝘁, Monuments, like all of these really like decent metal bands, and the feedback from the artists themselves, they were just like so stoked to be getting into video games, because there's always, I think, in terms of music genres in video games, I think alternative music specifically, whether it's like metalcore or hardcore or rock or punk or whatever else, I think because it goes back to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and stuff like that, there's always been that natural link there. So the artists loved it, the game studios loved it, and a lot of the game's fans who had never heard metal music before, or sometimes never heard any of these bands, because that music was placed into like an environment that they're familiar with, they then ended up falling in love with bands like Trivium and Polyphia. Like, and they were saying in the comments on the YouTube videos, this isn't the type of music I would listen to normally, but because it's part of 𝗏𝘓, I now really like it. So I think that's another unique thing about video games, where they can not only introduce players to like new bands and artists specifically, but they can introduce them into new music genres that they might not be into otherwise. Like I got into folk music, which I just like dismissed quite ignorantly as just being boring. I don't like folk music. And then I played Life is Strange, heard 𝗙𝘂𝘂 Stevens in there and was like, I think 𝗙𝘂𝘂 Stevens is now one of the best artists in the world. Like, you know what I mean? I think there's so many people like that who have had the same experiences.
Yeah, exactly. That also confirms that I think video game is also a great way to promote artists and to also to discover new music, because you spend so much time on a game compared to a movie or series that you get attached and you are really engaged. And sometimes, like, I'm not a metalhead, but playing, you know, like Doom, for example, I just want to jump in the crowd, you know. So it's really a great way to, I think, to discover new genres, new type of music, and for that it's really great and way more efficient than movies for the same purpose.
Yeah, it helps creating link even outside of the game. I remember, well, thanks to game music, you mentioned Motoi Sakuraba, who is like a very big progressive rock star in Japan, right. And I have a friend who actually discovered Genesis because he was playing a game with Sakuraba's music, and his father was like, what are you listening to? And he was like, oh, it's great music, it's very new. And his father just said, wait, I'm bringing you this vinyl, it's Genesis. And that's how a lot of us discovered progressive rock, actually. Now, about video game music as a marketability asset and mixing genre, etc., Julia, I would like to hear a little bit more about Ubisoft Music's role in all this and the kind of challenge that you will meet that are specific to music and gaming.
So, Ubisoft Music, we're an internal label within Ubisoft, so we work at the service of the studios that make the games, when it comes to video game score music or licensing music inside of a game. But we also work with the other side, which is publishing, marketing campaigns around game that need music for the trailers, they need partnerships for their campaigns. And that's where we stand, right in the middle, half a foot in production, the other half in business. And we're like, really, I would define it as we're in the service of our games, whether it's inside the game, outside of the games. I remember, like, some of the biggest partnerships that we worked on are often outside of games because artists don't really know, they're not familiar with how a game takes time to be developed. We're not talking 6 months, we're talking like 5 years. And sometimes they're brought in very late. So what we do is we do marketing outside of the game, which is already awesome. We did that with _Republic for Assassin's Creed Mirage. They did an entire custom song for the game, and it was so good. They didn't even did a music video, and turns out they are big gamers. So that's something else that we try to do, is find the artists that are the gamers. Because when you're a gamer, you understand how music plays in a game. But sometimes we also have like art developers that are fans of artists. So that's a mix that we try to do. But we're never bored. Like, we always have a lot of work.
Yeah, and since you're talking about Assassin's Creed, for Assassin's Creed Shadows, who is the last installment of the series and is taking place in Japan, you made some very interesting choice in terms of music genres. Like, there are several different genres in one game, which is very situated in medieval Japan, I think. How did it came to be?
Well, there are many games that are releasing in the setting of Japan or about to be released in the setting of Japan. So the question now is, how do you stand out? How do you just not make yet another feudal Japan 16th century soundtrack? And that's exactly what the Assassin's Creed Shadows team wanted to do. They wanted to stand out with the music. So we have our composers that are there to do the score music, the flight. They're amazing, and they already did Assassin's Creed Odyssey. They went for a more modern approach than what people would imagine when you tell them Japanese, feudal Japanese music. But not only that, they also wanted to have songs and like really tied into the narrative of the game, so into the cutscenes. Cutscenes are scenes that you don't interact with, it's like a movie, a short movie. And for this, they brought in 2 up-and-coming bands. One of them is 𝘕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀. They're Canadian-Japanese, and they do psyche rock. And the second one is Thunderdrum, featuring a Tanzanian artist called 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀. He's a rapper, and for the first time he rapped in Swahili, because we wanted him, like, their music to represent the 2 characters of our game, which are very distinct. We have 𝗏𝗏, the shinobi. So this was 𝘕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀's music, and we have 𝗦𝘺𝘂, the samurai. He's a black samurai, which is very rare in Japan history. And we wanted 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀 to really represent that character. So we have those score moments, but sometimes for very specific cutscenes to bring on further emotions. We have these artists coming in. And that's a great way for them to be known by a wider audience, because these games are played by millions of people that would discover, as we were mentioning, 𝘕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘂 and Thunderdrum.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And also, you released actually an album on the side of the soundtrack, which is a lo-fi album. Does everyone knows what lo-fi is? Like, do you listen to it for working sometimes, or even studying?
Lo-fi Girl.
Yeah,
we partnered with them based on an idea, and that's really, internet helped a lot, because we discovered Lo-Fi Girl through the internet. They're the 3rd biggest YouTube channel in France, turns out. And they were, like, we reached out to them and we asked them to do lo-fi remixes of some of the score music within Assassin's Creed Shadows. And that was great. Like, they were so enthusiastic. People are really happy. It's a cool album. 45 minutes of music. Go and have a listen if you like lo-fi music.
So we have a lot of synergies going on. And when it comes to collaborating between studios and a music maker, Tarafa, recently you participated in the release of Lost Records, which is a Downtown Montreal games.
Yeah.
And I know from working with them at some point that they're very picky into the music they want to put into their game. They want to have an aesthetic. So how did it unroll?
It was amazing to work with them because they really have like a great.
They have an amazing team.
Yes, they are an amazing team, and they really have like when it comes to music, they have amazing taste. It's the Life is Strange creators. So in terms of like the music is so important, and it's a narrative game. So the music is super present.
Just a small parenthesis: when Life is Strange, the first game came out in 2012, I think. It was one of the very rare narrative games with licensed music in it, and it was a big challenge for several reasons. So maybe you face the same reasons, like right holders or...
Yeah, exactly, because the soundtrack is a mix of pre-existing songs and original music. But even the original music that has been created for the game sounds like pre-existing music in a way, because it's not score or nor instrumental music. It's mostly songs. There's I don't know if you're familiar with Chromatics, but there's 3 members of Chromatics involved in the soundtrack, including Ruth Radley, the lead singer. And it was the first time that the band partly reunited for the project. So it resonated also with the community of the band and the Life is Strange community. And so there are Chromatics, a young upcoming punk singer called Nora Kelly, and also Milk and Bone. So really the soundtrack is phenomenal, and people are really loving it. We help them mostly on the marketing campaign and how to integrate the music and the soundtrack into the game campaign, not only do our soundtrack campaign, but really integrate the music as part of the project. So we produce music videos, for example. You were talking about clips. We did 3 music videos. We also did playlists based on each character of the game. So because in the game you are following 4 teenage girls in the 90s and then in the recent years. So we created a personalized playlist for each character, so people can really get more engaged with their favorite characters. So yeah, the music was super important, but the creative side was handled by Downtown Montreal, the curation of the artist and.
So basically, you took care of negotiating with the artist.
Yeah. We also negotiated the rights, the soundtrack rights, because it's not something that is always taken care of in advance, especially with independent studios and publishers. So we had to clean all the rights before the release, but. Yeah.
And that's something that's very important, negotiating the rights, because releasing a video game with licensed song in it is not like releasing an album. It has a lot of difference. Julia, do you know a little bit about this, or is it not?
I can talk about licensing music for trailers, but I talk enough with the rest of my team to know that it's very specific. Even we have discussions with SACEM and other PROs about what it takes to integrate existing music into games, because obviously sometimes we want to have that big artist and we want to have that big song in a game, but that is complicated. But I don't want to talk too much about this. It's too specific for me to be the one talking about it.
Yeah. Thank you anyway, but it's very important, especially now that we have games online and with internet in general, because we have seen cases of games losing their soundtrack all of a sudden, meaning you have an update of a game and you don't have sound anymore because the license is over. Matt, I think we have quite a few cases.
Obviously, I think anyone who works in the music industry knows how much of a nightmare just like Twitch and streaming can cause in general, and just how so much stuff needs to be whitelisted. So that's something that's affecting video games particularly, just because streaming pretty much came from video games, right? Do you know what I mean? Like the whole idea of streaming something and having you watch you do something online, like a lot of that came from COVID, when people were like, I'm just suddenly going to get into streaming, I'm going to play my favorite video games, people are going to watch. And obviously the streaming market itself, alongside esports and stuff like that, these are like multi-million-dollar markets, so they're absolutely massive. So basically, even though a lot of video game studios do still license music, although I'd say it's probably mainly in trailers now, just because you get so many game trailers. You do get game soundtracks with licensed soundtracks. I've heard, as an example, the new GTA game is going to have over 1,000 pieces of recorded music in it, which is wild. But if you're not a big studio, sometimes the complexities involved with licensing it can just be a case of, you know what, one, the fees involved with this, and two, we might not have a really big music team or whatever else. Let's just get someone to write original music for the game and stuff. I think the best approach that game studios can follow now is the multi-layered approach, where you've got, like you were talking about this earlier, where you've got licensed music from artists, but also maybe some original music that artists have written for the game. So it's like the best of both worlds. And a lot of game studios now basically provide an option for, if you want to stream that game, you can just press a button and it will just take all the licensed music out of the game. So you're not going to get hit with any copyright strikes, because obviously music licensing is incredibly complicated, like you were saying too. Try explaining music licensing to a 17-year-old who just plays video games on Twitch and then gets an email one day going, your video has been removed. If you do this again, your account's going to get removed. They're just kind of like, what? Have I broken the law? Like, do you know what I mean? So it is really complicated. I think the message to the music industry, I think, would be like, be aware of this as well. And I think this goes back to my earlier point of identify who amongst your artists are like genuine gamers, because I think game studios now are definitely looking towards more original composition alongside licensing. So that's something that like music publishers need to be aware of and labels need to be aware of, because even though there are still plenty of licensing opportunities in video games, I think I can probably fairly confidently say they are going to shrink over the years, and perhaps already have shrunk. Do you know what I mean? Like, people talk about this decade being like the golden age of video game music. You could probably say the 90s was the golden age of video game music. Do you know what I mean? When people were just smashing out licensed soundtracks after licensed soundtracks. Like, if you played a sports game on the PlayStation, it would have a licensed soundtrack of like 15 or 20 artists. And those sports games, because dev times were shorter, would come out every 3 months. Do you know what I mean? So I think the golden age of discovering music through video games, even though it still happens now, and I discover new music through video games, was definitely like in the 90s and 90s.
And to further add on what Matt was saying, this is really representative of the reason why now at the Grammys there's a dedicated category for video game score music. So you still have the best albums for visual media categories, where you can put the soundtracks with licensed song, but you're not going to be able to put the licensed song into the category for video game score. It's only the original music that was created for your game. So that's a recognition of the work and effort and money put into making incredible original music. And you know, the latest example is the 𝘕𝘀_𝘀 soundtrack that even cracked top Billboard tops and classical tops. That's amazing.
Yeah, because 𝘕𝘀_𝘀 story is fascinating, because the composer is unknown, and the game soundtrack actually has been listened to more than 18 million times online.
Double that now. I think last time, wow. So for some context, there's a game called 𝘕𝘀_𝘀𝑆pedition 33 came out. I don't know how many people in the room have played it, but it's a game from an indie French studio, and it is absolutely smashing it, to the point where France's President Macron was like, yeah, shout out to 𝘕𝘀_𝘀 on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? The game has been such a big hit. We published the soundtrack. I think in terms of track streams now, we're on like, I think it's actually like 180 million. I think last time I checked, it just keeps going up. And I think 𝘕𝘀_𝘀 is a case study, like a really cool case study of like the power of video game music. The soundtrack is probably, I'd describe it as contemporary classical, but there's a mix of like jazz tracks in there and some other bits, but I'd say it's mainly rooted in classical music. The game's composer was found by the game's director on SoundCloud and has now been thrust into the limelight where, yeah, people are calling it like Game of the Year and stuff like that. But I think it's an important point because it demonstrates how popular video game music can be. I think it spent 7 consecutive weeks at the very top of Billboard's classical chart, which is an unbelievable feat for a video game soundtrack. And it's not the only game soundtrack to land on Billboard charts. There was a jazz soundtrack for a game called Cuphead that got on there. I think if you look at the official charts right now, the UK charts, I think Minecraft is in there. I think the Doom soundtrack is in there. So there are more and more video game soundtracks now that are finding top charting positions like in official charts and stuff. And I think that just speaks to the volume and popularity of video game music in general.
Yes, I remember a few years back, England has been a bit in advance on France from this perspective, but I remember the classic FM charts where basically we have to vote on which is the best classical music composers, and they got game music composers on top of the list a few years in a row. It's fascinating. All right, we are almost done. Maybe I have one last question, since we covered a lot of different synergies possible between gaming and music. What would you have, all of you, a recommendation for artists that actually want to get into the game? Because there are lots of possibilities, but it's pretty difficult to actually put a toe in there.
I think it's really easy to say in my position, but I would say dare to be a gamer, dare to be proud to be a gamer, dare to reach out to companies, dare to showcase your music, dare to stand by your creative ideas whenever you're working on game music, but also be flexible, because developing a game, it's a messy thing.
A released game is a miracle.
Yeah,
I don't know who would say that, but they were right.
Any released game is a miracle. That's a fact. And so yeah, it's to go back to 𝘕𝘂𝘀𝘀, 𝘕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀 was found on a game developer's blog or Reddit or something like that, and that's how he was engaged, hired, and that's how he topped the charts. Yeah. So I'm guessing you have other advices?
I totally agree with your point, but at the same time, Lauriane had to work during 5 years without sharing any music and focusing on that. So thankfully, the game is a massive success, and so it's incredible and it's really well deserved. But it was not an easy process, I guess, for Lauriane as well. But I totally agree with your point. I think also it's important for aspiring composers or artists that are interested by video game to explore and to try to understand the specificities of this industry, and it's the same for music professionals. If you don't really understand how it works between the studios and the publishers and the different genres and how the audience is structured, it will be more complicated. But I think with the new generations if you are interested by video game, it's better to be a gamer himself. So it makes things easier. But yeah.
I'll rattle off a load of quick bullet points. I think first, if you've got management representation or label representation, please tell your label and please tell your management that you like video games, you play video games, and you're looking for opportunities in video games. I've spoken to a couple of majors recently and also management rosters where, as part of their onboarding process now with artists, they will ask them what video games they play, what video game consoles they own. I think that's a really good way, and that definitely helps us guys, because when we reach out to management and labels, they can just come back with a list and just go, yeah, we've got this person, that band, and they're looking for this and that. If you have the time, because as you were saying, the challenges of being a touring artist, you don't have much time, but teach yourself things like Unreal Engine, or just learn how music integration works in video games. There are lots of tools out there. Fortnite Creative, there's got some really cool development tools now where you can teach yourself how to build music experiences. And 3, if you're, like I was saying before at the start, if you're a label, if you're a manager, just speak to your artists and just try and find find out what you can from them, because that's how opportunities happen. And then, sorry, final point actually. I have identified artists for partnership opportunities by finding social videos where they've talked about their favorite video games, or like there's a really funny video like 𝘠𝘂𝘀𝗵𝗫𝘄 buying a Nintendo Switch like 4 or 5 years ago and talking about how much he's excited for Mario Kart. And I'm like, all right, cool, 𝘠𝘂𝘀𝗵𝗫𝘄 likes Mario Kart, he's a gamer, and that stuff like that just stays in the back of your mind, you know what I mean? And then if one day an opportunity does come in, you can just go back and go, well, I know this artist and that band play games because they've posted about it, or maybe they did a cover. There's a lot of game composers who found careers in the video game industry by starting out making covers. 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀, who writes music for Sonic the Hedgehog now, he started out as a YouTuber just making Sonic covers. So just, if you are genuinely passionate, if you're an artist and you want to get your music into games, there are loads of different ways you can kind of put the feelers out there and express an interest, so game companies can help catch you.
Yeah, and there's another example, it's Imagine Dragons. That's exactly how they were signed by League of Legends, is because one day in an interview they said that they were late to their own concerts because they have a ranked League of Legends game that they were finishing, and if you leave the game before you finish the part, like the game, you're done for like 20 days. So they didn't want to be done for 20 days, they wanted to be able to play, so they arrived late at their own concert, and they said so in an interview, and Riot Games were like, hey, come on.
All of the three of you, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It was fascinating, and we had some great stories. Now the end words. I also want to thank all the three of you, because video game music and video game and music is a synergy that continues on growing and developing, and all your companies are involved in next year's exhibition that will actually open at the Philharmonie de Paris, so Paris Philharmonic. It's a huge project, and the collaboration with gaming is not just putting vinyls and showing games, it's a lot more than that. So it opens in April 2026. I hope you will come to see it, because everyone will be represented. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.